What is up, responsible day traders? Today is Sunday, August the 7th, 2022. I am Lindsay Duff, and this is Responsible Day Trading. So we had a very interesting week last week, so we're going to just kind of take a quick peek over that as we look at the daily chart. It did go up to that area of the EMA, and it's just kind of stuck to it. So now it's trying to make that decision. Are we going to hang out here? Are we going to push up higher? Or are we going to hold out and push down? Now, we'll see as we started today. It was just like last week, huge move up and has pulled back down. So we're going to see if it's going to continue moving down or if we're looking for it to push back up from there. So I don't know what we got in the news. We're going to look at that together today. And I guess we can go ahead and get this party started. So as we like to do, let's go ahead and start out with the news. So let's go ahead and head over here to news, down to market news, and check out what we got for the week. Okay, just kind of what I was anticipating. Not a whole lot. We don't have anything on Monday. Tuesday, we have 11 a.m. So that'll be a couple hours after the market opens. So it might have a little bit of a moving effect on it. Wednesday, we've got some pre-market. So you just want to be aware of that if you're a pre-market trader. And then an hour after market opens, we've got crude oil inventories. Thursday, all pre-market, nothing on Friday. So it's a little bit quiet on the news front this week. So let's go ahead and see what the market's got for us. So as always, we do like to start off with this daily chart, and I'll make it just a little bit bigger so we can really take a deep look at this. Now, I want to look right here in this area. We drew a little box back here saying that we were anticipating it to reach that area. It did. It pulled off of it just barely and is still right here at this area. Now, the way that the bars are trying to present themselves, we have a long bar here. It looks like it's trying to push itself up, but man, it's really gonna be difficult. We're starting to see the slow and roll of the BBs. If these BBs start to get back inside, then we're gonna really wanna be aware of this area possibly holding. Right now, we are still lower than that last pivot, not by a lot, but we are still lower than it. Our MACDs are starting to get just a little bit lighter in color here, which tells us that we may see a slowdown. You can see when they get that lighter color, it tends to slow down and at least give us a little bit of a push in the opposite direction. One of the things about this here, when we got up here, we created this tiny little bar. A lot of times that tiny little bar is a big sign of exhaustion, and this may just be people trying to continue that move back to the upside as it closed up at the top of the bar, but had a lot of activity on Friday towards the bottom of it. So it's going to be really interesting to see if we're going to see something more along the lines of this, where it holds out for just a little bit and then pushes down. We're starting to see, like I said, a little bit of the slowdown of the BBs. You can see they're closer together right here. We had distance between the BBs here, which said strength and momentum to continue up towards that area. Now, if it pulls back, we're going to want to see these BBs do a nice big pullback. If we're going to anticipate it to continue to the downside, we want to see them have enough strength to cross that bottom Bollinger Band. That doesn't typically happen in one day. Here you see it happened in just a couple of days, but it still took 4 days for it to cross that bottom Bollinger Band. So the fact that we were at the zero line here, the slow and roll, was a big sign that this was going to push down. And we're at that next EMA. We're at that next area of resistance in the MACDs that hold it. And this is a really high area of resistance, a really strong area of resistance. And we don't typically make it much higher than this in the BBs. So am I going to anticipate this to push back? Just by looking at this, I'm going to at least anticipate it to give a little bit more of a pullback if it's going to continue up. I mean, heck, like I've always said, the market can do whatever it wants to do. So we may see some strength and momentum. We may see new heights in the MACDs that we've never seen before. It's not typical of once we had strength and momentum. Typically what we see is something along the lines of pulling back towards this EMA as it moves up, maybe more along in this area and continue up if it's going to, or pull back, hang out there, and then push down. making those decisions over a couple of days means having your risk set in a very large spot. That's why I really like trading the much quicker charts so we can have much lower risk. So let's go ahead and move to the 28,657, which is our next biggest chart. You can see here, this is representing the EMA that we have run into on the daily chart, and we can see that it's really still holding up at this area. Now, looking at the 28,657, we do still have EMAs open to the upside. That's not a bad sign. This little pullback in the MACDs was almost just barely noticeable compared to how much we pulled back in the price here. So, it wouldn't be beyond expectations to see this hold out here and push back up. I mean, we're still on that first bar of the day from the 28,657. So it's got some movement to do. It's only 30 minutes after the market opens. So things are going to move slow. They're going to be a little bit harder to read prior to the market actually getting started and moving. Now, this by all means is what we would consider a reversal bar. It does take the third bar to create that. So if this BB or if this close on the bar ends up down in this area and then the next bar comes up and moves down, definitely a flag reversal bar. So something like this that we would be seeing. Because you can see those BBs holding up or those closes holding up and then pushing back down towards that area, and the price tends to go in that direction. It's a strong area to create a bounce both to the upside and to the downside. You have this area of the EMA, which is a fairly strong area. We can see as we pulled down to it several times and pushed off of it, and it held even though we overran it just by a little bit. And we have that strong area of the large EMA up here. So it really gets us kind of trapped between those support and resistance areas. Now, if we're really looking at this, this is 30 points worth of trapped areas. So even if it bounces back and forth between those areas, we should be able to find some opportunities within that. All right, so let's head on over to our trading charts. Okay, so daily chart, all of them are going to show that long reversal bar because that's the way we started the day, right? We started with this long reversal bar. It pushed up, and it looks like it happened really, really quick and then closed towards the bottom of the bar. Now, in the rules of a flag reversal bar, this isn't quite one because we want this close right here to be within this bar, and we're not seeing that happen here. So this is definitely not a flag reversal bar. This close is going to have to come down a little bit more to make it a flag reversal bar. So let's talk about the things that are going to hold up the party, right? Number one, we did get a little wishy-washy above and below these EMAs here on the 10,946. So using those 10,946 EMAs as areas to create a bounce doesn't have as much weight as the ones that it's actually holding at. And that is something that I do pay attention to. So right now these EMAs are trying to open to the downside. Reason being, we had such a big spike down and then pulled back up to it. It's going to create that separation between the large and the small EMA. So right now it's trying to show us that it's trying to make the attempt to push to the downside. We have a zero line holding up the party right here. We are outside of the Bollinger Bands, but extreme weakness on the 10,946. So not a lot of strength for it to hold. There is a good chance that this could roll and continue back up, especially when we look at the retracement divergence that happened here. You can see how far this price pushed up and how much it came back. Now, if we look at how much it comes back here, we can see somewhere around 50%, maybe just a little bit more, that this came back and reached on the price. But if we're looking at the MACDs, we came back about 25%. So that is what I call retracement divergence, where the price pushes so much more than the MACDs. And it really is a helpful thought process in if this starts to turn to the upside, to anticipate it to push up and continue up past this area. Now, as I'm sitting here talking, these BBs are trying to make that move to the downside, but they're just not quite there yet. The 1597 and the 233 have definitely shifted to the downside. They're back below the EMAs, back below the zero line for both of these. So it's trying to make that move to the downside. I would be a little cautious if you're trading overnight because things are so slow. You can get yourself stuck in a thought process that is quickly jumping back and forth from long to short. And you really don't want to have that kind of effect. You really don't want to have that kind of thought process whenever you're trying to make profitable trades. So you really want to be in tune with the direction of the market. And if the direction of the market is hard to read, then you want to wait. Something like this, where we're back above the EMAs as it's crossing to the upside and rolling here, this is a great opportunity. Now, if we were to get in short here, let's talk about something. Could we have put our risk back behind here? Sure, not at this point because it's 4 points difference between these. Could we have had our risk back here? Sure. Now, the real space to have your risk is all the way back up here because that is as far as it can pull back up for our last pivot high. So our last pivot high is way, way, way up here. So it gets a little bit dangerous if we're getting in too late to trades because having our risk in the wrong spot gives us the opportunity to get stopped out much quicker than if we had it in the proper spot. So as I'm looking at this right now, everything is trying to point down, but a lot of that has to do with this big bar that moved. We have a lot of things holding up the party. Number one, we have a zero line here. Let's look at our bigger tick charts again really quick and talk about the things holding up the party. We still have blue BBs. They're starting to roll. This is the gentle giant, so it takes a while to move and into the EMAs. But since they are still blue, being just a little cautious about big moves to the downside, they start turning purple, we're going to have a different thought process about that. If we go to the 28,657, some things that are holding up the party to the downside definitely would be this EMA right here, and the fact that the major retracement divergence happened on the EMAs, happened on the MACDs on the 28,657. And once again, we'll go through that. You can see how much these MACDs pulled down. What would you say? 10%? 5%? But if we look at what happened here, we can see this pulled down 50% of the move. So typically you're going to want the MACDs to kind of agree with that movement in that direction. And currently they're not agreeing with that movement in that direction. So what that means is that we may see this hold up right in here and this BB start to roll back up to the upside just a little bit, maybe just enough to come up just a little bit more and continue back down. But for now, it's going to be really hard to see this have a nice big strong push to the downside until we start seeing some agreement in the MACDs and some thought processes that tell us we're going to push through this area. When we have really weak MACDs as we're coming into a major area that could create a bounce, that's a big sign that that area has a possibility of holding until we pick up some strength to push down. So while our smaller tick charts are really trying to say, hey, we're pushing this to the downside, we're moving this in the opposite direction. We did have very weak movement to the upside. There is a lot of room to run in the MACDs here, but we are still below the zero line. So you tend to see fights when that happens. And it's a fight between what area is really going to win out. And, while this says down, I'm going to wait for it to prove it to me. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is I'm going to wait for it to get past this area and then pull back towards it to give me some opportunity to move to the downside. Otherwise, I'm going to wait for it to move back up, possibly even all the way back up here. That's a big move to move back up. If it gave me some opportunity in there, I might take it. But as things go right now, I'd really want to see breaking through this area before I really jumped on the bandwagon to take any kind of short. I want to see these BBs stay strong and outside of the Bollinger Bands, maybe even do that little kind of crook and drop off big time in order to be on board with this moving with strength to the downside. Yes, this is a reversal bar. Yes, it says that we have opportunity to the downside, but where, right? You want to wait to be patient, because if we're not patient, we're trying to get in every little spot and we're getting run over because we don't have our risk in the right place, as I was discussing just a while ago. And it's frustrating because it may just still continue in that direction if you just be a little bit more patient and wait for the opportunity that gives you a place to put your risk, to have low risk. Then it's a lot safer. And if it doesn't work out, then you've got your risk in the right spot. All right, guys, that is going to wrap it up. So more than anything, pay attention, be careful. If it doesn't give you opportunities, don't try and make them up in your head, because that is the quickest way to get stopped out and then get frustrated and then start making up a narrative about yourself that says you don't know what you're doing. And maybe you don't at the time, but that doesn't mean you won't ever know what you're doing. It just means that you need to take those lessons and learn from them. One thing I tell my students to do is to go through all their trades. Look how many times they take these certain trades that lose, maybe directly into an area, or maybe something that just consistently they're not having their risk in the right place. Those are the type of things that you want to go through, collect all the data, look at those, see how many times you took a trade in a direction that didn't work, why it didn't work, and start putting those together and saying, okay, every time I trade directly into these EMAs without strength, it doesn't work. I wonder why. But it just opens up your eyes. It lets you learn. It lets you know and understand what you're doing. That is absolute key and can keep your mindset in the right direction. It keeps you learning every day about the market and about yourself. Okay. Well, I hope everybody has the most fantastic week. You know, guys, I really appreciate you being here with us. If you've got questions, reach out to us. We're happy to help. And as always, you know that I look forward to catching you on the profitable side.